Welcome to the Psychology of Gambling, the podcast from Mind Over Odds, where we believe if you control your emotions, you control your outcomes. Today we are doing a deep dive into near misses and lucky charms, basically the hidden science of the lucky lie.
Right, the lucky lie. Which, I mean, it's something literally everyone deals with, even if you don't gamble at all.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just think about the last time you were running late for a huge meeting or like an appointment.
Oh, yeah, the worst feeling.
Right. And you jump into the elevator, the doors are open, and you just immediately start mashing the door close button.
Like 5 or 6 times, yeah. Just hammering it.
Exactly. And, logically, the button is probably disconnected. I mean, it is not going to make those doors close a single millisecond faster.
Right, but you press it anyway.
You press it anyway, and your brain actually physically rewards you for doing it. You feel this tiny hit of relief just from pushing a useless button.
Which is wild, because why does your own nervous system actively reward you for doing something completely useless?
Well, that is the mission for today's conversation. We're going to unpack why our highly evolved, brilliant, pattern-seeping human brains consistently fail us the moment we step into an environment of pure chance.
Yeah, it's a profound quirk of human biology, honestly. We always feel like we are somehow getting the hang of games that are completely random.
It's so true.
Yeah.
So from a mental health perspective, we call this the illusion of control.
The illusion of control.
Right.
And there was this classic experiment back in, I think, 1975 by an American psychologist named Ellen Langer that perfectly shows how desperate we are to feel like we're in charge.
Oh, yeah, the office worker study. This one is fascinating.
It really is. So she approached a group of regular office workers and just introduced a standard random office raffle. The tickets were $1, and each one featured a picture of a different football player.
Okay, so just a completely ordinary setup. Nothing tricky about the odds at all.
Exactly. The odds were perfectly identical for everyone, but she changed one tiny variable. She split the workers into 2 groups. Group A was presented with this whole array of tickets, and they were allowed to actively choose which specific football player they wanted.
Okay, and the other group?
Group B was just handed a ticket by the experimenter. Like, they had zero choice in the matter. You get what you get.
So Group A gets to browse and pick, and Group B just takes whatever they're given.
Precisely. So then, right before the actual lottery draw happened, Langer went up to both groups and offered to buy the tickets back. She just asked, what is your selling price?
And this is where the human brain just throws logic out the window.
Completely out the window. So the workers who were just handed a ticket, the ones with no active involvement, they asked for an average of $1.96.
Which makes sense. I mean, it's perfectly rational. They bought it for $1. They want a little nearly $2 return for the inconvenience of giving up their chance to win.
Right. Total sense. But the workers who were allowed to choose their own ticket, they demanded an average of $8.67.
Wow. That is almost a 900% markup for a $1 piece of paper, just because they picked it up themselves.
Just because they pointed at it, yeah.
So if we know logically that a lottery ticket is completely random, why does the simple physical act of picking a piece of paper inflate its value in our heads so drastically?
Well, it comes back to that survival mechanism we talked about. The human brain is basically a giant cause and effect engine.
Right. It evolved to find patterns to keep us alive.
Exactly. You eat a specific berry, you get sick, you learn to avoid it, you track footprints, you find water. We are deeply wired to believe that our actions have direct consequences.
So when she introduced choice into the lottery, she introduced what's called a skill cue.
A skill cue, yeah. Something that tricks the brain into thinking it's taking a test instead of just, pulling a random lever.
Right. Things like choice, involvement, familiarity. When you inject those into a scenario of pure chance, the brain just gets confused.
It really does. It notes that you made a decision, so it assumes your judgment is now a factor in the outcome.
It's applying a survival algorithm to a random number generator.
That's a great way to put it. And if our brains are doing this accidentally in some 1975 office raffle, think about what happens when an entire industry actively weaponizes that psychology.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Modern casinos and gambling apps are literally engineered to force that confusion.
Yeah, they don't wait for you to accidentally confuse luck and skill. They design the environment around it. The illusion thrives on active involvement.
Which is why gambling has moved from passive experiences to these highly interactive digital ones.
Exactly. I was looking at some really interesting data from a 2014 study about this. They looked at the psychological differences between older single-line slot machines and modern multi-line machines.
Okay, let's break that down simply. A single-line machine is the classic retro one, right? You pull the arm, 3 wheels spin, and you just need 3 cherries to line up straight across the middle.
Very straightforward. You know instantly if you won or lost. But multi-line machines allow you to bet on dozens of different zigzagging patterns all at once across this huge digital screen.
Right, so because you're covering so much virtual real estate, you are mathematically more likely to hit some kind of matching combination on any given spin.
But covering all that real estate costs more money. You have to place a bet on every single one of those zigzagging lines.
And that is exactly where the trap snaps shut.
Yeah, let's say you bet 20 tokens to cover all the lines on a spin, the reels stop, and you actually hit a matching combination on one of those random lines. The machine pays you back 10 tokens.
Wait, let me do the math there. I bet 20. I got 10 back. So I'm in the hole. I just lost 10 tokens.
You lost money. But the machine absolutely refuses to act like it.
Right, the lights go crazy.
Oh yeah, it triggers this massive sensory celebration. Brilliant lights flash, celebratory music blasts. The digital display literally tells you that you are a winner. It's called losses disguised as wins, or LDWs.
That is essentially a biological hack. Your logical brain might briefly register that your bankroll went down, but your eyes and ears are flooding your nervous system with the sensory feedback of a huge victory.
It triggers a huge dopamine release. And the behavioral data shows how devastatingly effective this is. They had players sit down and do 250 spins on both types of machines.
Okay.
And the mathematical payout rates, the actual true wins where a player got back more than they bet, were perfectly identical for both machines.
So the same exact level of success.
Yes. Out of 250 spins, players had exactly 45 actual wins on both. But when they asked the players to estimate how many times they had won...
Let me guess, the numbers were totally different.
Completely. On the single-line machines, they guessed 46. They were incredibly accurate.
Wow, almost spot on.
But on the multi-line machines, the ones with the disguised losses, the players estimated they had won 60 times.
60 times. They overestimated their success by a massive margin just because the machine disguised their losing streak.
Exactly. And if you feel like you are winning more frequently, you don't just feel lucky. You feel like whatever strategy you are using is actually working.
You feel like you possess a skill. Your brain detects that artificial reward, assumes the action it just took was correct, and reinforces the behavior.
It is doing its job perfectly. It's just, doing it in an environment designed to feed it false data.
It's like finding a face in the clouds. The face isn't there, it's just water vapor, but your brain refuses to unsee it.
Right. And it isn't just disguised wins that trick us. Sometimes it's how close we get to winning that keeps us hooked.
Oh, the near-miss effect.
Yeah.
This is one of the most powerful psychological drivers out there. We have all felt it.
Oh, absolutely.
You're playing a game, the first reel lands on the jackpot symbol, the second reel lands on the jackpot, your heart rate literally spikes, your breath catches.
Yeah, you're on the edge of your seat.
And then the third reel clicks into place just one tiny fraction of an inch above the jackpot line. You lose. But it doesn't feel like a loss.
No, it feels like an incomplete win. And the neuroscience behind that feeling is just staggering. When you experience a near miss, your brain activates the exact same reward pathways as it does during an actual legitimate win.
Even though your bank account just took a hit, your brain is dumping dopamine and rewarding you for failing.
Because it's interpreting the near miss as a signal of progress. Like, if you throw a spear at an animal and miss by an inch, your brain says, hey, adjust your grip slightly, you're getting closer, try again.
Which is a great mechanism for learning to hunt. But it is a catastrophic mechanism for playing a programmed algorithm.
Exactly. And they program these near misses to appear way more frequently than true mathematical chance would ever produce, just to exploit that dopamine loop.
The machine is constantly whispering, you almost had it. Your timing was just a millisecond off. Which creates a perfect storm when you combine it with the gambler's fallacy.
Oh man, the gambler's fallacy. The mistaken belief that independent, isolated events are somehow magically linked.
Right, the roulette table is the ultimate theater for this. You watch the dealer spin the wheel, and the ball lands on black. Then lands on black again, and again.
And after 5 black spins in a row, every instinct in your body is screaming that a red is mathematically due.
But the roulette wheel is an inanimate object. It has no memory. It doesn't know it just landed on black 5 times.
The odds of it landing on red on the 6th spin are the exact same as they were on the very first spin.
Yet we project our human desire for narrative balance onto a piece of spinning wood and metal. We fall into magical thinking.
We genuinely start to believe that unseen forces of luck are gathering in the room, and it makes us invent little lucky charms to try and harness that force.
Like the story about the 2002 Winter Olympics.
Oh, the Canadian Looney coin. That is the purest example of this. Before the ice was frozen for the hockey finals at the Salt Lake City Olympics, the Canadian ice makers secretly buried a Canadian $1 coin right at center ice.
A literal lucky charm buried into the battlefield.
Right. And then both the Canadian men's and women's hockey teams ended up winning gold.
Which is an amazing story.
It is, but athletes are superstitious anyway. What's shocking is the cultural reaction afterward. They dug the coin up, and it became this legendary artifact.
They put it in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they specifically designed the security display with a tiny slot so that visitors could reach in and physically touch the metal of the coin.
Because the public intuitively felt like the luck was a physical substance, like something you could catch just by making skin-to-skin contact with it.
Contagion theory. We completely abandon our rational understanding of cause and effect because we desperately want to believe that luck is something we can touch and control.
But, I have to push back on this a little bit because it's one thing to look at this academically and another to live it.
Sure.
If I'm holding a pair of dice and I've won 3 times in a row, the physical sensation in my body telling me that I am on a hot streak is overwhelming.
It feels incredibly real.
It does. The biological instinct that tells you tails is due or I almost won is so hard to fight. When your own nervous system is the thing lying to you, sometimes you just can't logic your way out of that loop.
No, you really can't.
Which is exactly why outside intervention is so important. And if you or someone you know struggles with compulsive or problem gambling, free help is available 24 hours a day by calling 1-800-GAMBLER. It's confidential. And it's there for when logic fails.
Absolutely. That resource is crucial because if our biology is this stubborn, how do we actually break the illusion on a daily basis?
Well, to understand how to dismantle the trap, we actually need to look at some more recent data that completely flips Ellen Langer's original 1975 theory on its head.
Wait, a plot twist on the office worker lottery study?
A major one.
Yeah.
So researchers recently ran a massive replication of Langer's original work. We are talking about involving over 10,000 participants.
10,000 people. Okay, that is a huge data set. What did they find?
Well, remember how Langer concluded that the mere act of choosing the ticket, like physically moving your hand and pointing, is what caused the illusion of control?
Right. If I pick the ticket, my brain assumes my skill is involved, so I value the ticket at $8 instead of $2.
Exactly. But this new data proved that the physical act of choosing doesn't magically generate the illusion out of thin air. Instead, they found that people choose specific options because they already hold deeply ingrained pre-existing beliefs.
Pre-existing beliefs? Like what does that mean?
Think about the last time you bought a lottery ticket. Did you just tell the clerk to print a random quick pick? Or did you carefully fill out a card with your kids' birthdays or your anniversary?
Oh, I mean, a lot of people always play birthdays. If you don't play them and those numbers hit, you'd never forgive yourself.
Exactly. You don't value the ticket more just because you actively chose it. You value it more because you brought your own heavy, emotional, magical thinking to the counter before you even made the choice.
Oh, wow. So the choice is just a symptom.
It's a behavioral artifact of a need you already had.
That is a profound distinction. You're saying the environment isn't creating the illusion of control. We are actively projecting our own need for order onto the environment.
Yes. And from a mental health perspective, psychology differentiates between primary control and secondary control. Primary control is straightforward. You steer a car, the car turns.
You put an umbrella up, you don't get wet. Action and direct reaction.
Exactly. But pure chance, like a spinning roulette wheel, represents uncontrollable chaos. And chaos causes intense anxiety in the human nervous system.
Because we realize we're completely helpless.
Right. Since we cannot use primary control to guarantee a win, our brains panic and appeal to secondary control.
So if we can't control the outcome, we try to control how we interpret the outcome.
Precisely. We try to align ourselves with the chaos so it feels less terrifying. We interpret a random losing streak as a meaningful signal that a win is due.
We use a birthday on a ticket because it physically soothes our nervous system. It injects personal meaning into this cold mathematical void.
Exactly. The illusion of control isn't just a mistake. It's a desperate coping mechanism for the terrifying unpredictability of life. We are just building little rafts of meaning to float on an ocean of chaos.
That makes so much sense. But that brings us to the ultimate question. If this is a deep-seated coping mechanism and the entire gambling industry is perfectly designed to exploit it, how do you step out of the matrix?
It takes deliberate effort. In treating things like problem gambling, one of the most effective tools we use in cognitive behavioral therapy is a technique called reality testing.
Reality testing. Okay, that sounds like a harsh wake-up call. How do you actually apply that?
It's essentially forcing yourself to become a rigorous scientist of your own life. It involves active, continuous logging of every single outcome.
Not just the thrilling wins, I'm guessing.
Nope. You have to log every mundane, depressing loss, too. You test your deepest assumptions. If you believe that throwing the dice with a specific spin generates high numbers, reality testing says, fine, let's roll the dice 100 times with your special spin and 100 times normally and rigorously map the data.
Oh, wow. So you are stripping away the flashing lights, the dopamine hits, and the emotional adrenaline, and forcing the logical brain to stare at raw mathematics.
Yes, you are proving to yourself, with your own undeniable data, that your superstitious behaviors have absolutely zero impact.
Because we all have selective memory. Like, we remember the one time we wore our lucky socks and won, but we conveniently forget the 6 times we wore them and lost.
Exactly. Reality testing forces you to look at the 6 losses. It's like realizing you've been wearing tinted glasses your whole life. You don't try to magically stop seeing the tint. You just finally acknowledge that the glasses are altering your vision.
You don't try to eliminate the physical urge to find a pattern. You just learn to aggressively question the assumption behind the urge.
That is an incredibly powerful way to frame it. There is a specific question we use in therapy that encapsulates this perfectly. When you feel that overwhelming certainty that your strategy is working, you pause and ask yourself, is this actually influence or is this just interpretation?
Is this influence or interpretation? That single question creates a mental gap.
It creates a vital space between the biological impulse and the physical action. And in that tiny space, you can regain actual primary control over your decisions.
Rather than relying on illusory secondary control over a randomized game, that really grounds you back in reality.
It really does. You know, to wrap this deep dive up, I think the most important takeaway is that while the illusion of control feels incredibly isolating and personal-like, you specifically have figured out a secret strategy that no one else sees. It's actually just a universal human glitch.
Your brain isn't broken. It's just trying to organize a chaotic world using tools that don't apply. The slot machine hasn't changed. The odds of the lottery haven't changed. Only your perception has.
Absolutely.
And, that leads to a much broader question for you, the listener, to mull over. We've spent this entire conversation talking about casinos and lottery tickets, but the human brain doesn't just leave this coping mechanism at the casino door.
It bleeds into everything.
Exactly. If we are this desperate to find patterns in random coin flips to soothe our anxiety, where else in your life are you falling for the illusion of control? Are there superstitious routines you quietly rely on in your career?
Or do you overanalyze random shifts in your relationships, convinced you can control another person's feelings through specific behaviors?
Or look at your financial investments. Are you mistaking a random upward swing in the chaotic stock market for your own brilliant, calculated strategy?
That is a deeply uncomfortable but entirely necessary thought to leave on. The next time you feel like you've got a chaos of life perfectly figured out, ask yourself, is it influence or just interpretation?
Really great question to ask yourself.
If you found this conversation helpful today, please follow the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review. It helps more people in our community find these resources. You can also visit the Mind Over Oz YouTube channel for more psychology-based insights on gambling behavior. We'll talk to you next time. Control your emotions. Control your outcomes.